Yo, what is up, guys? So I'm going to be showcasing off a 50+% chance to win deck. And I'll explain why it's a plus in a second, because it's technically higher than 50% if we draw one of the cards, which we play 5 copies of. But at the end of the day, guys, this is an FTK cheese-oriented deck, utilizing Summon Sorceress as well as Mannequin Cat. I'm just going to pause it real quick, because the duel's over in 2 seconds. Alright, so Summon Sorceress lets us special summon a monster to our opponent's board, and that's going to be any light monster. It doesn't have to be this card, but Raffling shouts to you, but you decided to play the dog. It's really not like an important thing, other than maybe you can use it for specific levels, but pretty much, if it was a tuner, it would actually make sense, but for the most part, just a light monster. Mannequin Cat lets me have that effect where if my opponent special summons a monster to the field, except for during the damage step, I can target one face-up monster my opponent controls and special summon one monster in my hand, deck, or graveyard with the same type or attribute as that monster. Can only use her effect once per turn. This is the only card we are technically missing in the TCG, I believe. I don't know where we're going to get this card. It actually came out last year in Japan, so hopefully we'll be getting it pretty dang soon. But this would be technically legal for the ban list, as long as we, of course, get this card. But anyways, it just has to be a light target. And you know what's interesting enough? I didn't know you could just special summon the Arcana Force 21, the World, which is the key card that lets this FTK work. So when this card is summoned, you can toss a coin, heads during your end phase. You can send 2 monsters you control to the graveyard to skip your opponent's next turn, which can be used infinitely. Granted, that's a 50% chance because you're tossing a coin. If it's tails during your opponent's draw phase, they get to add the top card of their graveyard to their hand, which could technically hurt if that's a hand trap or anything, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter because he will never be able to Yu-Gi-Oh! And even though you could argue that they'll have Ash Blossom, you play Called by the Grave, so like that basically mitigates the whole like argument of what if they have this hand trap. Guys, it's an FTK deck, usually those lose to hand traps anyways, but you could argue that Called by the Grave basically mitigates that. So it's like, you play 2 copies of Ash, I got 2 copies of, Called by the Grave. Unless, of course, you play 3, then there would be a little bit less than 50% chance, but I don't know if you're going to look at it that way, but this deck is really consistent. So, important thing, we're actually using Firewall Dragon's effect, so we can, of course, add the card and special summon another card, so we get to summon another Mally. At this point, we're sending Deshrudo. This card is kind of important. What it allows us to do is blow up the board, potentially, if our opponent has anything. And at this point, your opponent doesn't get to Yu-Gi-Oh! Because remember, that heads effect applies. That's a permanent effect. It's only when it's summoned it's not like once per turn you flip a coin. It's just like, that's the effect that it gets. So, that's pretty nasty. Your opponent will not be able to do anything, with the exception of any hand traps, but I'm pretty sure they would stop it from coming out in the first place if they were to have any. But again, you can play Called by the Grave anyway. So, now that you guys have seen it in action, I want to give you guys a deck profile. And I also quickly want to mention, if it's still in the title, I'm live streaming right now on Twitch. We're going to be playing some Yu-Gi-Oh! As well as some Fortnite later tonight. So if you guys want to catch me live, check the pinned comment, and I'll let you guys know if I'm live right now or not. We'll play some games tonight. But I don't know if I'll play this deck, just as a heads up. This deck is really mean, but it's a very consistent deck because, as you guys saw, he even drew Hero Kid. You don't always want to draw this card. If you draw it, it's not that bad. You can still go Marauder Captain, go into Hero Kid. There's a lot of other options, technically, with Firewall Dragon, which makes the combo a little bit more complex. You probably would need to have like Instant Fusion or Living Fossil to kind of extend your combos. Or if you have Foolish, there's a lot of options in this deck. It's not like, oh, if you get one play negated, that's it. There are more options, even if you get Veilered, Ash Blossom, whatever the case may be. You still have these, like, the cards that can still extend your combos. Be something like Junk. If you summon Junk Forward first before going for your other plays, and we also have 2 copies technically of Soul, but like this could extend your combo. Also, Foolish can extend your combo because you can set whatever card that you want. Living Fossil, Instant Fusion, all these other cards can still extend your combo, even if your opponent has like a card to negate your, one of your plays, because of the way this deck is kind of designed, which I actually really like. So, I'm gonna give you the guys the deck profile, but like I said, I might be live right now on Twitch, so check in the pinned comment if you guys want to check me live. But importantly, I wanted to explain some of the key concepts that might help your deck if your opponent goes first. Because technically, this is an FTK deck, but you can still play around, even though it technically it has like over 50% chance, which I need to mention right now. Let me do this before I forget. So first off, why is this deck over 50% chance to win? Well, we have 5 copies of a card called Light Barrier, which is a field spell card that says, during your standby phase, toss a coin. If the result is tails, the following effects are negated until your next standby phase. So, technically, you still gotta flip a card with it. if you guys want to look at it, it would be technically 75%. Like, because if you're tossing this coin, that's a 50%, and this is also 50%. Which, if you want to look at it, usually people will say that at that point that's technically a 75% chance. But if you really want to argue with that kind of stuff, it could be technically wrong. But if there's two 50% chances in any game, and you just need one of those to be correct, that theoretically should be 75%. But nonetheless, Field Barrier, when you summon an Arcana Force monster, you get to choose which effect you apply without tossing the coin. But there's another bonus effect. If an Arcana Force monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you gain life points equal to the destroyed monster attack, which is irrelevant because you don't need to heal life points at all. The most important thing is you just get this card out. Basically, you just make a soul, then you can go ahead and go straight into Summon Sorceress, and then you go, of course, into Mannequin Cat, courtesy of your hero kid. Now, you could play another card called Plague Spreader Zombie. I've seen builds where they will play multiple Plague Spreader. But that was to make Mannequin Cat. It wasn't specifically this build. This is the first time I've seen someone summon Sorceress, Mannequin Cat, and then go into the combo of Arcana Force 21 The World, which is an insanely good card. I don't know if it'll get banned, but like I was just unaware you could just special summon from the deck. A lot of these combos were like you would tribute to summon this card, but nonetheless, that's how it works. But briefly, before I get into the deck profile, I wanted to explain some of the core things that you can do. We also had Deshrudo, which obviously lets you pay half your life points, and whatever card that you potentially go into could be Black Rose Dragon. Obviously, Black Rose Dragon, that's like a no-brainer. You blow up the board, then of course you just make the card. There's usually a lot of times where I have like 2, sometimes 3 if you draw really good. Extra cards to be able to go straight into your combo. Another card that I actually would think would work quite well in this deck is honestly Pot of Desires. The reason why is because you want the highest chance of getting your combo. Any cheese deck, I always recommend that card, because once you go for your combo with the Mallet, the only important like key cards that you don't want to get rid of is going to be your Maligs and Hero Kids. The rest of the cards in this entire deck are pretty much expendable because you don't have to have these other cards. Of course, we're talking about Mally and Hero Kid to, of course, make Mannequin Cat. And once you get into Mannequin Cat, you summon the world. And then, okay, I guess the important cards in this are, whoops. These are the cards you would not want to banish. Obviously, all 3 copies of Mally, all 3 copies of Hero Kid. But after you go for that combo, the rest of the cards don't really matter. You just want to try to either draw into Light Barrier, or just have some extra hand traps in case your opponent has something. But again, they probably would have done their negation in the first place anyways. But yeah, there's also another play where you can just, let's say, Foolish. You can Foolish a Mally. Then you could, of course, normal summon a Veiler. That's another way to just quickly make Black Rose. That's a very important card in this extra deck. You could technically Instant Fusion, and keep in mind this card is technically a tuner, and you could just go straight into it as well. Obviously, you'd have to play a different card in the extra deck, but yeah, you can just making Black Rose and then going for your play can be good. Again, this is if you are going second. Obviously, you don't Black Rose the field first, but just want to get those out of the way before someone says like, oh, it's only FTK, and if it doesn't work, it falls apart. Which is, I mean, any cheesy FTK deck, that generally does happen, just as a heads up. But again, this deck can still play out, and it can still make some of these like really insane monsters, even if your FTK combo doesn't work. But anyways, onward with the deck profile. It's just an important thing because you don't always go first in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which technically is also a 50% chance to go first, right? But anyways, we got 1 copy of 21 The World, we got 1 Deshrudo, 3 copies of Mally, 3 copies of Armageddon Knight, 2 copies of Marauding Captain, 3 copies of Junk Forward, 2 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Hero Kid, 1 Outstanding Dog. Again, it doesn't really matter. This card could obviously be replaced. Actually, I wanted to mention really quick, number 29, Mannequin Cat. It does special summon anything from your deck. I mean, this could almost shut down your opponent as well. Obviously, this card is better if you want that, like, you know, a chance to win. This card technically does let your opponent play, but it is another target, and there's an OCG build that was running this, so I want to just mention that. Again, it was the OCG build was not Arcana Force, but there was a build of this. It was the same concept, but they would just bust out Christie every single turn, which, I mean, the deck is very consistent. It's just a sold. It's one of those decks. Also, I want to know in the comment section below, are you guys tired of seeing a sold? Because I've honestly seen so much of this, although this one's a little bit more unique. But I honestly feel like this card is just way too good. It's too consistent just to be like, bam, throw it out. It should have been 2 Noble Knights, honestly. But anyways, yeah, Christia, another good card to shut down your opponent. Obviously, this is much better. But anyways, we got Hero Kid, then we're at the Dog, then we have Glow Up Bulb, which can actually extend your combos. You can also alternatively play Plague Spreader, and then also run Needle Fiber, it can extend your combos as well. But you know, when are we getting that in the TCG? We have 2 copies of Droll, 2 copies of Veiler. So this is really good if you're going second. We have 2, 2, and 2, so multiple copies of Hand Trapped. You can also play Ghost Ogre if you wish. Then we have 2 copies of Instant Fusion, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, Terraforming, which is of course more copies of Light Barrier at the end of the day. Foolish Burial, which this card is just great opening up with. We didn't even have it. Then Reborn obviously can extend your combos. We got 2 copies of Designators, so it basically cancels out majority of players that will play like 2 Ash Blossom in most decks. We got Moon Mirror, Divine Sword, Living Fossil, and Noble Arms, just another like equip at the end of the day. It has an effect where it loses 500 attack, but it's pretty much mediocre. Multiple copies of Light Barrier, and then we have a Phantom Knights of Shade Brig, and that's gonna let you just get an extra monster, because it has the effect where if you have no trap cards in your graveyard, you can activate this card the same turn it was set. So it's just another special summon monster, but it just happens to be a trap. And as far as the extra deck, we got the Ragin, we got Black Rose, Manic Cat, Borreload, Firewall, Summon Sorceress, Trigate, Unicorn, Phoenix, Sold, 2 copies of Soul. That's actually pretty important. Again, you can still go through your plays when it gets negated. We have Cerberus, we've got the Underclock Taker, and Link Karibo. As far as this deck being workable in the OCG, there we go. I mean, the exception is like Terraforming and then Ash Blossom, which we only play 2 of, so there's really not that much of a difference here in OCG versus TCG. In fact, putting this card to 2 doesn't really change too much. You can also drop one of these cards. This is not like a once per turn anyways, but if you want that variety, go for it. It really doesn't matter too much, but it is a level 4. I just want to mention that as a heads up, so you can kind of go into other things that Junk Forward tactically cannot. It really comes down to making Black Rose Dragon if your opponent does go first. But anyways, yeah, that is the 50+% chance. The reason why I say 50+, again, Light Barrier gives you that extra additional chance to get it at a more consistent rate. But very cheesy FTK deck, pretty interesting and unique. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the vid. If you did, drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Like I said, also check the pinned comment. I might be live right now on twitch.tv. If not, you're always welcome to follow me over on Twitch when I live stream, which again is in the pinned comment. But anyways, thanks for watching. I'm signing out.